So I got to spend some time with the Vision Pro, Apple's new mixed reality headset, and boy do I have some thoughts. What a time to be alive. Let's quickly get into it. So the experience starts off with them measuring your head, and with that they can figure out what size of the eyepiece will sit around your eyes. That'll give you a proper secure fit. They also measure your eyesight so that to make sure that you get the right focal length. And if you are wearing specs, you will be able to order customized lenses for the Vision Pro, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. In the experience, the first thing that you immediately realize is the materials and the finish of this product. While making trailers and videos and promises is easy enough, Apple has managed to actually make a product before even talking about it, and this product looks good. If you've used Apple devices in the past, you'll be really familiar with the design of the Vision Pro. It has the same aluminum finish that you find in the AirPods Max, and the same feel of the knobs, the digital crown that you find on the Apple Watch or the AirPods Max, and also the button, which is very familiar. There are not a lot of controls on the actual headset itself, as most of it is controlled by gestures. And to facilitate that, there are a ton of sensors and cameras, including LiDAR sensors, depth sensors, stereoscopic cameras, and a bunch of other stuff. On the front is a glass which covers the front OLED display. This is an outward-facing OLED display, and this too has functionality, and I will talk about that in just a second. On the inside are two displays that sit on each eye that are more than 4K and have a really high refresh rate, the numbers of which have not actually been given to us, but you can tell that they are at least 120 Hertz, if not more, because of the experience that we had. Now, the setup process is very simple. Once you figure out the fit, there is a little bit of a knob here that allows you to tighten the head strap onto the back of your head. Now, this head strap itself, in the images, the quality and the material is not done justice by the visual representation. This thing feels really good and is sort of secured by a metal sort of mesh that gives it a spring, and the outside is covered with a really, really dense fabric. This thing feels really solid. It's not going to go anywhere after even years of use. Once the headset is sitting on you and you find the right fit, you can also use an additional attachment that sort of goes on top of your head, but that is not something that Apple showed off in the video. So if you have an uncomfortable fit with just the headband, you do have a piece that can go on the top of your head as well. And in my case, after using that piece and getting the fit right, you barely even feel that the headset is on you. It is really well balanced, and it doesn't seem very heavy either. And part of that reason is because the battery pack sits outside the headset. So this smooth, almost pebble-shaped metal piece powers the Vision Pro and can be connected via a MagSafe sort of connector that connects on the left of the headset. And the cable for this battery pack can go behind your ear, and then the battery pack can sit in your pocket so that you can move around, and it's not cumbersome in any way. It feels perfectly fine to walk around with this and the power bank or the battery pack in your pocket. The first thing they do is calibrate your eyes so that the headset can know where you are looking. So once you put this thing on, the setup process begins. And in that, you do get a few dots that you have to follow. You get a few points that you have to focus on. Very simple. A few seconds in, and you're basically good to go. One thing that I initially thought was that if I'm looking at a certain point, and I'm the kind of person who doesn't like focusing on one particular aspect. So if I'm looking at something, I'm always noticing things around it. So my eyes are all over the place. And my question was whether that would cause the headset to sort of jitter or miss my actions a little bit. And that wasn't happening at all. So once you look at a particular point, if you look at an app, if you look at an icon, all you need to do is basically tap your fingers together, and that initiates a click response. And this thing, I have to tell you that until you experience this thing, you don't know how seamless and smooth this is. That experience was actually really, really good. But if you're scrolling, for example, if you're watching some content on Safari, if you're reading something on Safari, you basically pinch and you grab the page. So if you're looking at a web page, you're basically looking at the web page, and then if you pinch and sort of scroll up, it'll scroll up. If you're browsing through a gallery of images, you can simply look at an image and sort of tap it, and it'll enhance that image, but then you can grab it and sort of scroll along, and then it'll go on to the next image. It's completely like Minority Reports, exactly like that, but it is really refined. And in the movie, they show you sort of moving through things really quickly. And you can actually do that in the Vision Pro as well. So the good thing about this is that this control is universal. So you can grab the scrub bar of a video from the bottom and you can sort of move it with your hands. So if you grab it and then move it, it tracks your hands very accurately. And you can pick and place the playhead of a video at a certain point and it'll play from there. And it's really precise. It's not jittery, it's not laggy. You don't have to do it multiple times. You just pick and drop and it works as well as it does on an iPhone where you simply scrub along a video. It works as good as that. And if you're looking at a panorama picture, you can look at it in a flat dimension, but you can also look at it as a panorama, so it can go around you. And then you do have that spatial fill, so if you turn the digital crown, it'll fill up the entire space with color. You can choose areas where you want to be, so you can fill up the space with the digital crown, and you can be on an island, you can be in the mountains, you can be on another planet. That all works really well. Looking at things is really intuitive. So even when you're using objects in real world, if you're using a phone, for example, you look at it before you go and point and tap at it. So it reduces at least one additional action that you would need to do. Basically move your hand out and tap on something. Here, basically, you can look at something and just click your fingers, and you don't even need to lift your hand. You don't need to bring it inside a particular peripheral vision. You can just have it sitting on your lap and you can just be tapping your fingers away for the affirmation of the click. So this is basically a click, and the single press of the digital crown brings up the home menu, and a long press centers that home menu. So wherever you're looking, if I'm looking on my right, I can long press on the digital crown and bring up the home menu here, and then I can continue to do other things here. Another cool feature of this is that if I'm using a particular app, so if I'm using Safari, for example, which I have to say is really intuitive, and I'll talk about that in just a second, but I can have that window here, but there is a bar at the bottom, much like the swipe up bar on an iPhone, and you can just look at that bar, sort of grab it with a click, and then with your hands in the virtual space, you can move things around. So it can be right up in my face, or I can grab it and sort of move it around. I can even put it up on the ceiling and I can sort of leave it there. Now this you would feel is a little gimmicky or a little jitter. If you grab the window, it'll start flickering around because it doesn't know or is not sensing. No, it's not like that. It's almost as seamless as they showed in Minority Report, if not better. This is actually really refined and it is really precise. It can pick out your finger movement, your hand movement really well. Apple also announced something which was not shown to the public, which was basically given as a preview to all the people who tried the headset, was Apple Immersive Video. So they are going to capture a 180-degree video, which is basically designed for the Vision Pro. And in this, some of the demos were, I have to say, really, really mind-blowing. So in one of the demos, you're sitting at a bar table and at a bar counter, and there is a singer who basically walks up to you and is singing, and behind her is the entire band that is also sort of making music. So there's a drummer, a guitarist, and then there's a singer right here. And for just a few moments, I completely forgot that I was wearing a headset. The spatial audio and the feeling of immersion is so high fidelity that you don't realize that this is not actually real. There were demos of you basically flying over some rivers and lakes, and in that demo as well, and I have a little bit of a vertigo where I have a little bit of a fear of heights. In that demo, I actually felt like I needed to grab onto something because that felt so real that you actually feel like things are sort of blowing past you. The sounds and the sight and the vision is so crisp that you sort of forget that the reality is that you're sitting on a couch and not moving around. These demos were a good example of what the Vision Pro is basically capable of, but there were other really good demos, and I want to get into those a little bit now. Another feature that was sort of demoed was the 3D capability of the Vision Pro. And you just fire up the Apple TV app, and in that they had a demo of Avatar, the newer version of it. And you basically get to see this movie in 3 dimensions that you get to see it in movie theaters. But unlike movie theaters, it is really crisp. So it's able to create that depth without requiring any filters, and that allows you to experience it in a completely different way. You don't lose out the detail, and it doesn't look hazy or appear sort of distorted in any way. You get a really high res version. So the 3D movie experience feels much better. But then you take it to another level by capturing content on the headset. There were two things that were shown off. One was a picture, and in that, you do see depth in a completely different way. So you look at portrait shots on phones and you see that, okay, you can differentiate between the background and the foreground. But in this, you're experiencing depth with respect to distance. So you know that this person is sitting closer to you, whereas that person is much further. So you can actually visualize it, and you can relive that experience in the images, which is basically what they were going for. There was a demo of a fire pit where a few friends were basically sitting around having some drinks, and there's a fire going right here, and whoever recorded this is sitting in front of the fire, and you feel the fire like it's right there. You know it's right there, but it's also not there. So it's very confusing, but like the depth aspect of it, and this is a video that's playing back, it feels very realistic. A question that I did have for Apple was if the headset can capture this content, and if I want to be in that content, is that possible? So right now you have to be wearing the headset to capture this 3D content. But I asked them that if I want to be a part of this 3D content, is it possible to do that? And they did take that feedback, which is, it's not like Apple to take feedback from somebody, but they did take that feedback and said they'll look into it, and possibly you will see the ability to remove your headset, sort of keep it somewhere. The Vision Pro is here recording 3D video, and you can be a part of it, and you can thank Bharat Nagpal for that in the future. But it is an experience that until you have experienced it, I can only talk about it so much, and you will not get to see it or feel it the way that I did. So it's kind of... They also showed off the FaceTime capability. So what you saw in the keynote, where the FaceTime video call is generated from the headset. So in my case, I was not able to sort of map out my face, but they had somebody sitting in the Apple campus who had taken a 3D capture of his face, and he'd called me on FaceTime within the headset, and he was 3D version of himself. And this is not like a animation or an avatar or a visual creation. This is basically a scan of your face that is being moved around based on what you're saying, sort of with AI or machine learning. So it knows what you're saying, and even though you don't scan your teeth, it sort of generates teeth for you if you smile, and it moves your face and gives you expressions. It's kind of creepy, it's very dystopian, but it looks very realistic, and it is better than having an image or a 2D flat render of your face versus this three-dimensional person talking to me over here. And then they can also share their screens and whatever they're working on. So if you're doing a work call and you want to discuss some presentation, you can sort of have it in your room somewhere, and you can be talking to a couple of people on this side, and you can look away and you can discuss the presentation. It's out of science fiction, but it is done in a very, very, very refined and very smooth way. And this is basically using little things and pointers and positions. And once you place a window, it doesn't want to jitter out of the way, or it doesn't move around. It's basically fixed in space over here. It's kind of crazy how well this will work. One feature that is really cool and needs to be talked about is the display on the outside. So when you're not looking outside, the display just shows an animation to the other person. But when you are looking for them, it shows a sort of a capture of your eyes to the outside. And it is almost as realistic as if you're just using a visor. It is as clear. And when you are looking outside and when you're not operating in the sort of augmented reality space, it also just seems like you're wearing like a visor on your eyes. It doesn't seem like there is content being captured and then shown to you again. It doesn't seem like a projection of the outside. Because of the high fidelity, it actually just feels like you have a glass in front of you that you are seeing through, and not a camera and screens and everything's being captured. Another thing that I was talking about, this eye sensing technology, is that it knows where you're looking in the space. So if you're looking beyond the headset, so if you want to focus, so if I have somebody sitting here, and while watching a piece of content, if I'm watching a YouTube video, and I can sort of turn the knob and I can be watching this YouTube video on an island and I don't need to be in my house. But if I have somebody sitting here and they say something, I can simply look at them, and when I look beyond the island and beyond my YouTube video, it opens up a window in that virtual space, and within that screen it sort of opens up a window, and then I can see that person and I can interact with them, and the minute I'm done talking, it sort of closes that window and I can go back to my work. It's like sort of speak to pause music, but in this case it is speak and look away to pause your immersion, and then the minute you stop the conversation, the immersion comes back, and it's again something that I can talk about, but I can't really explain. Finally, the demo of the dinosaur. I'm sure you've heard a lot of people talk about this, but at the end of everything, there is a demo in which a window opens up in space, and from there a butterfly flies out, and sort of you put your finger out and it comes and lands on your finger. And it doesn't matter where your finger is in space, it'll land on your finger because it is measuring it through the headset. And me and a few people that I was in the demo with, and we discussed this at the end of it. When the butterfly comes in, you're anticipating something. And in that anticipation, when it sort of lands on your finger, you feel a little bit of a tickle, and you know that it's not there, but your body is telling you that something's there. So it creates a reaction on your finger, and it sort of creates a little bit of an itch that something is there, but you know it's not there. So it's not like it's a completely non-sensory response. Because of the realism of this thing, you do feel a little bit of a sensory response on your finger that something is there. So it's a little bit of a tickle. I know a lot of people have had different experiences where they didn't feel anything, or they sort of felt weird when this happened. But in my case, there was a little bit of a tickle, and I discussed it with other people, and a lot of people said that they did feel something land on their finger. So because you're so immersed in that experience, that your body starts creating that experience and starts enhancing it a little bit more. And of course, in this, there is a dinosaur, and you saw this in the keynote. So the dinosaur sort of steps out of the window, out of the video, and sort of looks at you and comes right up to your face, and you can walk around, walk to it, sort of interact with it, want to touch it, but obviously you can't touch it because it's not there in your space, but it's right there, and the visual fidelity and the audio from the sound pods that sit right next to your ear, it immerses you even more, the audio, because you're not isolated. So because when you're isolated, you know that you're wearing something that is blocking your hearing, and you're only hearing certain digital audio. But in this case, because you're able to hear your ambience, and then also able to hear the audio of the dinosaur with such fidelity, that it actually feels much more real than if it would with AirPods on. One thing that I have to say that they've done really well is measure out height, which is something that virtual reality headsets for me have always been a problem. So they don't really realize your height. So if I am 6'2" and I look in space and I look down, I always feel shorter because they're designed for average height of 5 feet, 5 inches, or whatever the average height there is. And you immediately start to feel that the ground is much closer to you, and you start to feel that things are out of proportion, and people who are short within your visual experience appear to be your height. So it just feels not natural. In this case, the headset knows what your height is and where you are looking. And so if I'm moving around, obviously it's giving me a projection of where I am, and that gives me a real sense of reality, because it is able to give me that information. And even with that demo that I was talking about of the woman just walking up to you and sort of talking to you, so singing right in your face, that experience was different for everybody, because like I was with somebody who was a little shorter, and he was basically able to look directly into her eyes, whereas in my case, I was a little above her, and I was able to sort of see that she was a little shorter in height than me. And it's just these little things make that experience a little bit better. I also got to speak to them about fitting and availability and all of that. So once you are ready to buy this, and once this does become available, if you have a prescription of your eyes, you'll be able to upload that prescription, and that prescription will go to Zeiss, and then Zeiss will ship out the lenses directly to you, and Apple will not be involved in that process. So that aspect of it is very clear, especially for the US market. I don't know what it's going to be like, if at all this service will be available in India. For the headset itself, once you're ready to buy it, if you're buying it online, you'll be able to use that app to scan your face, scan your ears, and then they will recommend a fit for you, and then they can ship you that fit. But the recommended way of doing this would be to walk into an Apple store which is doing the fitment, and they will measure you out, they will measure your eyesight, and then sort of give you a fit based on your face. And so they do have different eyepieces, so the cloth that goes around your eyes, and the headband is also adjustable. You can tighten it and loosen it, and then they want to give you the perfect fit, so they can assemble this product for you. It's very modular. You can remove and split things out, so the headset becomes like just this little piece of technology, whereas the fabric and the headband and everything else is separate. Another thing that Apple talked about was that the headband is not something that has to be just this one design. They are expecting a very rigorous aftermarket to form up for this product, so you'll be able to get accessories and the whole wazoo for the Vision Pro. But Apple also is not fixated on the fact that this will be the only sort of strap available for the Vision Pro, and you might get to see more versions of accessories and straps and bands and things like that for the Vision Pro. But that was my experience, and I have to say that if you're interested in something like this, I don't know what the real use case would be. I imagined immediately that, like, you can look at your Mac, pull that screen out, and if I'm editing video, I can edit video in a really big screen in a very high fidelity, so I can look at my colors and my things to sort of fix. And one more thing that it does is sharpen the area. It sort of pushes the processing power towards where you're looking. So when you look away in different places, it sort of blurs out areas that you're not looking, but it's happening so quickly that you don't feel any lag. And most headsets do that. All headsets will sort of push the processing power towards where you're looking. But this does it so seamlessly and sharpens and gives more processing power to the areas that you're operating in, that you don't feel like you're losing anything in that whole experience. It is powered by the M2 chip and the new R1 chip, which is designed specifically for this. And the power bank or the battery pack gives you about 2 hours, but the battery pack has a USB-C port that they keep saying you can plug into the wall, but I keep saying that you can get an additional big size power bank and put it in your other pocket and sort of plug in that into this. And I'm assuming third parties will be able to develop a power bank or a battery pack for this, which will give you more than 2 hours. So I don't feel like that is a little bit of a constraint, even though 2 hours seems like a little less, but it's not locked into that. You can have it last much longer. Well, that was my experience, and it was unique to say the least. It has been unlike anything that I've ever experienced in all of these years. And I have to say that once this device comes out, the use case of this will have to be really important to understand. And whether or not this becomes a device that isolates you a lot more than what your smartphones already do is something that is questionable. The pricing on this is really high, and it's going to sort of create a barrier of entry for a lot of people into sort of experiencing this, getting to use this device. But I can bet a lot of money that by September, you'll start seeing a lot of announcements of other people's versions of the Vision Pro at a much more affordable price, which is also what makes this something of a category starter, because a lot of Vision headsets have existed, VR headsets and AR headsets, and nothing of this caliber or of this refinement has existed, and this is definitely going to change or sort of create a category. How long this category lasts, we don't know. If it ever becomes something as big as the iPhone, seems unlikely right now, but 2 months ago it seemed unlikely that Apple will even launch a headset. So it's all questionable, and we are really excited to see what's in the future for this. And I, for one, am really excited to sort of use this on a day-to-day basis and see if it can fit into my work and my sort of personal life, where if I'm at home alone, not surrounded by people, can I wear this and enjoy a movie or a show in high fidelity with amazing sound, sitting on an island with the ocean on my side. That's it for this video. I'll see you guys in the next one.